I like some bad movies sometimes. You're gonna see bad movies on my list. Just don't judge me. Sometimes when it's bad, it's good. You know what I mean? There are generally two camps that vampire horror movie lovers enjoy. The first is the camp where the vampires are debonair, sexy. They fall in love. They typically have this beautiful gothic look to them. And then there's the camp that prefers their vampires bloodthirsty, vicious, evil. I enjoy both types of movies. So I think that's why this was extra hard for me. There are a ton that are not on this list that I love. Fright Night from 1985, directed by Tom Holland. This movie stars William Ragsdale, Christopher Sarandon, Roddy McDowall, and Amanda Bierce. I saw it as a child and I fell in love with Christopher Sarandon, a teenager who has a new debonair neighbor move in next door. And of course, as a teenage boy, he is nosy and discovers that his neighbor is actually a vampire. Dance scene in the club. Oh my God, that was one of my favorites. Okay. The music was a lot slower and sexier. I'm really a good dancer, I swear. I swear. Trust me. Fright Night is where my love for vampires began. Quite possibly one of my favorite movies of all time. And it is 1992's Bram Stoker's Dracula, directed by Francis Ford Coppola. This movie is incredibly beautiful. It has the most amazing, gorgeous costuming, scenery, everything about it. The score is just exquisite. It stars Gary Oldman as Count Dracula and Winona Ryder and even Keanu Reeves. Not Keanu's best role. We have Vlad seeing Winona Ryder's face and believing her to be the reincarnation of his wife. It is a very, very romantic film. It really is a true masterpiece. 1996's From Dusk Till Dawn, directed by Robert Rodriguez and starring Quentin Tarantino, George Clooney, Juliette Lewis, Salma Hayek. The list goes on. This cast is phenomenal. George Clooney and Quentin Tarantino play brothers who rob a family and then take them with them when they decide to cross the border into Mexico, where they stop at a establishment that is, of course, run by vamps. Duh. And this is one of the best and most fun vampire movies. Salma Hayek's transformation from this beautiful, gorgeous creature to it was epic. Tom Savini with his gun. Yeah, that was awesome, actually. 1997's Near Dark, directed by Catherine Bigelow and starring Adrian Pasdar, who is a man who is bitten by a vampire, played by Jenny Wright, and then he is taken with them on a road trip and what transpires. It's kind of got a Western feel to it. He is phenomenal. She's great in it. It's got Bill Paxton, who is fabulous, absolutely fabulous in. Lance Henriksen. This movie is a true 80s Western vampire classic. Blade from 1998, directed by Stephen Norrington. Blade, played by Wesley Snipes, is the half-human, half-vampire warrior, hunter, who is determined to get rid of all vamps. It's set in more modern day where there's more modern technology, so he has cool gadgets. He can walk in the day. Now, here's the one movie where I had a little bit of a rough time with, because I love Blade 1, but Blade 2, directed by Guillermo del Toro, is fabulous. Fabulous. It has more of Ron Perlman, obviously Wesley Snipes. It's such a great film as well. I feel like both of those need to be on the list. Although I'm also the person who actually liked Blade Trinity. Don't judge me. Don't judge me. We have 1983's The Hunger, directed by Tony Scott and starring Catherine Deneuve, David Bowie, and Susan Sarandon. This movie is the epitome of an 80s film. The style, the wardrobe. They have Bajas, Bela Lugosi's dead, in the movie, which therefore by default makes it absolutely fabulous. David Bowie and Catherine are a couple. Unfortunately, David comes to realize that being a vampire may not be exactly what he thought it would be. Because living forever is all well and good if you're young and beautiful. But what if you're not? Ooh, sounds really nerdy. 2011's Priest, directed by Scott Stewart. This movie stars Paul Bettany as a priest who actually goes against the church when his niece is kidnapped by vampires. He decides to basically go and rescue her. This movie is very atmospheric. The vampires are pretty brutal and vicious. There's something very fascinating about the Catholic religion, and that with vampires is pretty cool. 2007's 30 Days of Night, directed by David Slade, and it stars Josh Hartnett, Melissa George, and Danny Houston. Danny is phenomenal in this movie. It's basically an Alaskan town that falls into darkness for 30 days, and vampires see their opportunity to take advantage of that. Once again, we deal with the vicious vampires. I think this is one you all want to see. 2009's Daybreakers, starring Ethan Hawke, Willem Dafoe, and Sam Neill. It's about a plague that actually turns people into vampires. Considering how far the plague is spread, vampires are the ruling class, which means that their food source is scarce. So it is about them planning for their future and how they're going to attain blood. Ethan Hawke is really at his best in horror, I feel like. Those are some of my favorite movies he's been in. Black Phone, excellent. Underworld, directed by Len Wiseman and starring Kate Beckinsale, Michael Sheen, and Scott Speedman. It's the classic war between vampires and werewolves with a little bit of a cool genetic twist. I love that they delve into the history and origins of vampires and werewolves. The werewolves are equally as great as the vampires. And I really enjoyed pretty much the entire series of these films. I am sure there's some on the list that you're not crazy about. And if there's some that you feel like absolutely should have been on the list, why don't you tell me about that below? Comment. Also, if you have any ideas for any top 10s or something else you'd like to see, let me know about that too. What are some of the movies that I would have added to this? Nosferatu. I love Bela Lugosi as Dracula. Subspecies, Full Moon. That just did not hold. That just has not held up to the test of time. But I loved Radu. Oh, he was wonderful. I Am Legend. I thought about What We Do in the Shadows, which I love, but I didn't want to actually really include comedies on this. I feel like that could be a separate list. And obviously The Lost Boys, phenomenal, but I put it on my last list. Let the Right One In, Interview with the Vampire, Queen of the Damned, Shadow of the Vampire, Kronos. I love Guillermo del Toro. So good. Vampire's Kiss,